I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and here I have some yarn that has been pre-soaking for about a month. Now, I did change out the water at one point, and there is a little bit of soap in here with it right now, just because, see, there's like a little discoloration here. I don't know if that's going to show up really well on camera. A little discoloration. The yarn doesn't smell bad or anything, but I think some wool yarns have like a sediment or something that comes out of it, and I think that that's basically what this is. Now, this yarn, I think that this is Alla Prima, which is non-superwash. I think we have 200 grams, or no, sorry, 120 grams of non-superwash yarn here. So, yeah, not ideal to leave things soaking this long. I mean, it's really not ideal. What I should have done is removed the yarn from the pre-soak that was just plain tap water. But either way, I should have removed the yarn from the pre-soak and hung it up to dry. Because now I don't remember too much about how I made and prepped it. Now, I do know I have connected mini skeins, but I don't remember how many. I do have some B-roll of the yarn from before, and so I'll throw that up in a minute. But today we're gonna finally dye this. And I think we'll do a hand painting technique. I think I'll still go for something rainbow. That was the plan. I'd originally prepped this yarn to dye as a fundraiser for the Trevor project, and I still need to do an update, or maybe I've already posted a short with an update on how much we raised, but I know we went through my goal of $500, which is super exciting. And I'll link the Trevor project down below if you would like to make a donation. So I still want to dye this as a rainbow, I think. But if my memory is correct, I have 5 connected mini skeins with maybe a tiny 6th. Maybe. Past Rebecca was super helpful in filming some close-ups of the yarn for the fiber content and the yardage. And I even wrote down on the label, okay, oh, this was me calculating how many yards and maybe wraps to have equal sections of the yarn. But it looks like I ended up with 6 sections, maybe 5 or 6 sections that are relatively equal. I can't really tell, but here I am taking it off the nitty knotty. And well, editing Rebecca can tell that there were 5 sections because that's how many I dyed. But let's go back in time now. Now I know I just showed you the footage, the older footage, so that way you now know what's going on, but I still don't. So to this clean water, I'm gonna add 1, 2, 3 healthy glugs of white vinegar. This yarn is non-superwash. I am a little bit concerned about felting just because I have washed it a few times and it may stick to itself, but we're gonna cross our fingers. We're gonna go for it. We're gonna hope that we don't see any color transfer from the zip tie. I mean, anything orangish I think is from whatever was getting rinsed out of our yarn, so things seem okay. But for now, I'm gonna leave this yarn in this water that now has a bunch of acid in it. Unmeasured acid, but still, I guess if I had to estimate, there's probably about a cup of vinegar or so from those splashes, plus or minus, in case you're ever curious. But I'm gonna let this sit. It'll be about an hour, hour and a half before I start dyeing it, just because of the way my schedule is. But otherwise, I would be okay going from where we are right now with the acid to immediately removing the yarn to go dye it. It's not gonna hurt anything to wait longer, but you also don't have to wait a very long time once adding acid. There we go. I know this video is a little bit all over the place, but I guess my goal from this is not only to create some beautiful gradient yarn, but I want to show that sometimes things don't go according to plan, and that is okay. And it's okay to really do some things that you're not supposed to do, which is the long pre-soak today. I'm not always perfect. That's my point. While our counter is still dry, I'm gonna go ahead and prep the work surface with some plastic wrap. This is not always a step that I do, but in a case like today where, I don't like this container. Oh, it has nothing to keep it in. In a case like today where I'm hoping to keep our different color sections at least somewhat separate, when we go to steam set our yarn, I'm gonna want something to separate the different colors. And unfortunately, there's not something that's nearly as good as plastic wrap. Because sometimes you can keep your individual segments a little bit separate in a steamer basket, but the plastic wrap will allow us to sort of block things off a little bit more in theory. But now we can take a look at our yarn and see how many sections we have, because I think I want to know that before we start mixing our colors. See, I changed my mind about how we're gonna do things today. We're going with the flow. Oh, and everything I'm using is dedicated for dyeing yarn, including the plastic wrap. This is one that is not ever used for food because it touches things that are used for dye. Okay, let's remove our yarn from the pre-soak. Now, I want to remove as much of the liquid as possible because when we're hand painting this, we want to add liquid back into the yarn and have that stay. We don't want things to leak. Now, hopefully this hasn't felt anything because that would not be good. All right, as I set that aside, I am gonna grab another zip tie and we're gonna put another skein of yarn into this vinegary bath because, well, I don't know if there'll be any dye left behind. Want to make sure that this is ordered correctly. There we go. Okay, this is a skein of Knit Picks Stroll Fingering Weight yarn. 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. It soaks up liquid so wonderfully and fast. So we have this ready to go should we need it. But now I need to take the zip tie off of our bulky yarn and try to arrange it so that way we know how many plies we actually have. All right, we have 5 sections here, which is good to know. And I'll have to decide what I want to do color-wise. I don't think I want to go super saturated with this rainbow idea I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of remove the yarn away from the plastic wrap, just sort of carefully flipping it over. So I'm not going to disorder it, but that way we can work on mixing and preparing our dyes right here. For our dyes today, I have some 1% stock solutions of Jacquard acid dyes in turquoise. Is it turquoise or true turquoise? I always mix up sometimes the Dharma and Jacquard names. But I think turquoise, hot fuchsia, and bright yellow. And when hemming and hawing about the 5 colors, I decided to make green the center, which means that we're gonna go from like orange through purple and sort of skip the pinkish area. But maybe we'll do a slight pinkish orange. So yeah, we'll see where we are. Now, I want to do this a little bit by feel, and I'm wondering if I'm gonna be able to do drops at, nope. I was like, oh, can I do drops? Yeah, no. No, no, no. All right, let's do. We're gonna add some more water to this. Okay, so if this is gonna be our yellow, then we're gonna have our orange. Then we're gonna have our green. Okay. We're going by feel here. We'll add a little bit more water to these in a minute because we're gonna need to spread things out. Okay. I'm gonna add a bunch of pink here, and we're gonna add just a little bit of pink into our blue, just to shift it a bit. I'm gonna add a little bit of blue in there. A lot of blue here. A little bit of blue there. Okay, we'll see how these colors are in a moment. But let's add, I think about a quarter, no, let's not do that much. Let's start, and I love that I'm using tablespoons for just plain water. But let's start with just a tablespoon of water. I'm gonna need to add more, but by doing this, we're seeing our colors and our color intensities. And so then I know I want to add a little bit more blue over here. I want to add more yellow here. And there. All right, and let's do another tablespoon. I think how many tablespoons are in a quarter cup? About 4, right? So we're at about 1/8 of a cup of liquid. Let's bring it up to 3. We'll bring it up to 3 because a lot of times, I think back in the day when I used to do more hand painting, yarn could hold around 2 cups of water maybe. So hopefully this is a proportion that should be good. I do want to do one more little check, and it's to check the intensity of our colors. And what this is telling me is that our orange needs a bit more color. So that's a bit of pink, a bit of yellow, stirring it up. Okay, and we've pumped up the volume with the new orange to give us something like a little brighter. Okay, sounds good to me. So now I'm going to go reset all of this so then we can start painting our rainbow. There was a time when for something like this I would use, goodness, what would I use? I would use a lot of foam brushes or syringes, but I think today I want to pour. And I think I've also just decided just now that it's okay if the color doesn't go all the way through. Now these are colors that should take a while to strike, but we're going through a bit of the way. The colors should take a while to strike. And so that should give us more of a shot of spreading things out, but also it helps me to see how the yarn soaks up the liquid that we're adding on. And this is a very good sign because it's soaking it up well. And that means that I think that I can add some color, then add a little bit more liquid to the dye that's left to add color on to the rest of this, because I think that there is space for it to hold all that water. Or maybe I don't need to add more, but we can also decide how we feel and if we want to add a little bit more color to what's left. But the good news is that our yarn is really soaking up this liquid, and so that's helping us get coverage. Now, is this a pastel? No. I don't think it's fair to call this a pastel, but I think that we're getting a nice coloration. Now, I did bring the yarn mop over to have it ready just in case we would need it, but there's so little color that is extra sort of around, at least at this point, that I don't think that the mop is needed, and so that's why I'm using a paper towel. Now, we could get some breaking with some of these colors. That is sort of a feature, I guess, of using some of these turquoises and bright pinks. But things may go slow enough that we also may not. Now, I think that I'm going to try to work these colors through a little bit more eventually. But for now, this is going really well. Ooh, that's a pretty purple. Now, one thing that is helping me here as I'm playing with these colors and we're spreading them out is that I have done color mixing exercises with these Jacquard colors before. And so I therefore have a feel of what proportions of these colors, I need to mix these different colors. And this is one reason why it can be worth it to play around with color mixing, just because then you can learn something. All right, I think I'm gonna add, I don't think I need any more dye. I think I will add a little bit more water though to each of the residual dyes. So this is just one more tablespoon, about 15 milliliters of water. There's no acid in this water that I'm adding. I'm counting on the acid in the yarn to help me out here. So that was just me adding the rest of the orange dye on. And now as I press it through, we're gonna have some darker areas and some lighter areas, but I like that. That is part of what I decided I'm going for. And so I'm gonna try to get coverage, but it's okay if we have some whites left behind. Okay, now as we move on to the yellow, I did rinse off my hands. Hopefully we don't have too much dye left on there. Because yellow is the one color that sometimes you worry about. Just because, yeah, you worry about the yellow because if you add a little bit of blue to it or you add a little bit of pink to it, it's gonna shift. It doesn't really stay yellow that easily. Is that a way that makes sense? I'm not sure. But we could see breaking in any of these colors, and we will wipe the plastic wrap down a little bit more once we are ready. But I'm liking this bit of tonal variation in here. It's gonna give some depth to our finished yarn. So how much water will this be total? Because in the end, we've ended up with about a 1/4 cup of water on each section. And I think we have 120 grams of yarn. Oh yeah, so we've got like a little over 1.25 cups because there is some liquid from the dyes themselves. So not bad, not bad at all. Okay, I'm gonna keep the little bit of blue on my hands as we come in to our purple. So I don't think that should be a problem. But you can see, you know, we're missing that pink, but by having this purple be a little bit pinkish, that brings that element of the rainbow in. At least it does for me. Okay, and it's okay if we have some breaking in here because everything is so pretty. Oh my gosh, this worked out really, really well. Now you can imagine that if you didn't care about color transfer, we wouldn't need to wrap this up. We could place each color. If I had 5 steam safe containers, actually we could almost place each of these into like a little baggie or something to steam set that way. I don't think we need to do the jelly roll like I'm planning on doing. Ooh, or should we do the jelly roll almost that way? But then there could be liquid that goes in between. So I'm gonna do a classic jelly roll here, where I'm gonna fold up the sides, and this can wrap onto itself a little bit, and that's fine. But then we are gonna roll things up like so. And the act of rolling it, especially in these areas that are exposed, will help create a little bit of a seal. So that way the colors don't leak in between each segment, at least in theory. The problem will come when I have to bend it a little bit, which I'm gonna need to do as we bring things over to the steamer basket. Okay, our steamer basket is nice and hot. I'm gonna bring over our yarn, and I am gonna need to bend it. Cross your fingers that we're not gonna get any color transfer. But now I'm gonna steam set things. Goodness, I think I'm gonna do 45 minutes just because it is non-superwash. Cross your fingers for me. It has been 45 minutes I'm gonna turn off the heat. We are nice and steamy. Not expecting to see any color run off because we are tied up nice and tight. The good news is yellow still looks very yellow, but I'm gonna set this aside so it can cool completely before we open it up and wash it. When I went to wash the yarn, I think I waited until the next day to wash the yarn, and when I woke up I had no voice. So now I'm filming this voiceover after the fact. Removing the plastic wrap from yarn that has been steam set can sometimes be a little bit tricky because the cling wrap it doesn't melt per se, but it'll stick to itself and it's harder to find the edges. So that way you can separate them. But I was able to separate all of our connected minis and I added them back onto a zip tie. So that way I wouldn't risk tangling anything with the washing process. Now, as for washing, I used a little bit of dish soap and cool tap water and we saw no bleeding. Woohoo! This isn't a huge surprise because we didn't use that much dye. I made sure to go for more medium tones and not use too much of the colors that I know can be big bleeders. But at the same time, turquoise and hot fuchsia can be bleeders, and so it's always refreshing to have clear rinse water. Once I was done rinsing out the yarn, I put it through my spin dryer and hung it up to dry. Here is our gradient. We have our 5 connected mini skeins, and I can't sell the yarn in this condition because it would be really easy to tangle. So I'm gonna need to wind it onto a niddy noddy. I'm not gonna show myself winding this onto the niddy noddy itself, but having each mini skein have its each separate tie makes it really easy to separate these 5 sections from one another. And then I might just need to pay attention and switch directions that the Swift is spinning as I'm winding the yarn. So just take care. But right here, I'm just sort of arranging it so that way I can go and get started. Actually, the yardage here is low enough that I may not even bother using a Swift. I may just try to do this directly. Cross your fingers for me. Oh man. It would make sense to use a Swift, but the circumference of each of these minis is so small that I don't know. I think that if there were more wraps in each one and it would be more tricky to detangle, if needed, then I would separate them. But we'll see how this goes. Any concerns I had about the yarn getting felted at all are gone. But did you notice at the end when I went to tie this and I pulled this off? Ah! No, that's not good. That's not what you want. Oh well. Now I think that breakage happened because in all the winding I probably reduced some of the twist here. So always pay attention when you're working with single ply yarns, especially if, oh man, there was a time I made a sweater that was all single ply yarn, and when doing the seams I had to add extra twists so that way the yarn wouldn't break. Oh gosh. Okay, but let's go ahead and open this up. How pretty is that? To help keep things a bit protected, I'm gonna add a butterfly tie to it versus then relying just around the ends to prevent any other breakage. And over here where it comes to the ends, I'm going to very loosely knot it together. And then I have no idea if I'm on camera still, but I'll add that second butterfly tie. This yarn feels so Skittles to me. It is beautiful, and I was so concerned about the yarn felting or having some damage because I did soak it for weeks and then have to rinse it with soap and all this stuff. But the integrity is fine. It is soft, it is fluffy, and it did not felt. And so that's all wonderful. Now, if you're looking to bring home some of the yarn that I dye featured in these videos, I do have an Etsy shop, ChemKnits Creations. that is filled with hand-dyed yarn, and if you check out each listing description, you can find the video title from where I dyed it. Now, something like this, because I had to suction it, is a little bit more expensive than if I dyed just the skein as it came from the mill. But that's just because creating something striping or gradient-esque like this is more labor intensive. But anyway, you can find the links to my shop down in the video description. Which I say this because I know many of you either have your own shops or thinking about starting your shops, and don't forget to incorporate your labor when you're thinking about your pricing. But anyway, if you want to find the link to my shop, you can find it down in the video description. I'm just absolutely thrilled with how this turned out. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I love all things rainbow. I mean, I think purples are probably my favorite thing, but rainbows may be my favorite thing to dye up. And I hope you never get tired of them because I have more in my brain and up my sleeve. So please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.